sorry, let me say this again. 5th of February 2012, session number 7 of MNC4. One of the things that we are always faced in our life, in the school level, in high school level, in university level, and even after that, is the issue of worldview. Worldview. What is worldview? Worldview is where we get our beliefs from. Where we get our beliefs from. Worldview means how you look at the world. What is the way we look at the world? A school of thoughts, masalan, when we say religion of Islam, or when we talk about communists, when we talk about vegetarians, they get a set of beliefs from the worldview they have. So the definition of the worldview is a set of rules and definitions which explain the whole world for us. Correct? That's the definition of the worldview. Our understanding and analysis of the whole world around us comes from our worldview. Right? That's the definition of the worldview. When I talk more, you will understand more what I mean by that. And also, important point about worldview. Worldview is worldview is like a lens you put on your eyes. You see the world by that. Worldview is something which is only pertinent to human beings. So worldview is understood by your intellectual soul. Animal soul does not understand what a worldview is. So animals, they don't have the worldview. Correct? So worldview is the lens you put on your eyes to see the world with. It explains you all the things around you. What worldviews exist out there? What type of worldviews do exist? We want to learn that. Remember, especially, all of you are young, but Masalan Kashif and Kumel are not as young as some of you who are under 20. Sorry, my apologies. So when it comes to some, for all of you it's relevant. When it comes to seeing what people tell you about, people come with ideas to you, and you want to evaluate, to be able to evaluate those ideas. You need to know. You need to understand their worldview first. If someone comes and say, like my daughter, one of my daughters, she's having meat is too bad. You only have to have vegetables. Before I accept that, I would want to know what is her worldview. How does she explain the whole world, right? What type of worldviews exist out there? One worldview which exists out there is scientific worldview. That means when people explain everything with science, and we know that science is almost like a religion for a lot of people. They say whatever science finds and approve it, that you have to take your belief from, because worldview gives us the belief. We get our beliefs from the worldview that we adopt. So one worldview is science, scientific worldview. It means science explaining the whole world around us. Another worldview is philosophical worldview. That means philosophy, having a philosophy view of the whole creation. So philosophically, the whole creation and world of Allah is defined for you. Yes?
Is Skype on? Because I've had people saying that the Skype was not on.
The Skype wasn't on at all. Okay. Okay, let me bring, do you know who is wanting to? Maryam and Maaref. Can you do that, please? While he fixes that, I'll explain you. So we have got 3 worldviews out there that one will get his beliefs and understandings of the world around from those 3. The sources. Source of science, source of philosophy, and source of divine source. You understand what is divine source? Yes? Godly, comes from God. So we want to discuss and see what are the problems with scientific view, what are the pros and cons with philosophical worldview, and what are the pros and cons with divine worldview. Science, one of the good things about science, positive side of the science. Science gives a lot of details. When we learn about something, for instance, when we learn about the biological side of a tree, of a plant, it gives you a whole lot of information. All the details are there. That's a good thing about science. Because science gives all this information, also science gives the ability to us, when we learn scientifically about something, gives the ability to us to be able to dominate that thing. So then you can interfere into the genes of plants and change the colors, the shape of the fruits and things like that. That's the ability that science gives. Correct? But science has also shortcomings as well. One of the important shortcomings of science is, you know that science starts with theory and experiment, right? First someone comes with a hypothesis, he puts it into a lab, experiments it, and those theories, if proved over and over, it becomes a scientific rule. For instance, when they put everything, hold something, and then you leave it, it drops down. You do that with every object. You do that. Gradually, science experiments that and says, yes, there is a gravity. There is something called gravity, and it's proven by scientific experiment. But the problem with science is what? One of the main problems with science is ever changing, right? It keeps changing. Things that we know today, none of us knew 100 years ago. So if science was the source of giving face to people, what would have been the story of the people of 100 years ago? So they had no face in certain things. What about the people of 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago? Because science is an ever improving and advancing phenomenon. Science is not something fixed that the people of 3,000 years ago knew the same thing that we know today. So that's the problem of science. Correct? So science is ever changing. That's one of the problems of the science. The other problem with the science to get your beliefs and understanding and worldview from is science only deals with material side. Masalan, science cannot tell you whether there is a creator or not. So it's not the job of science. Cannot examine that. Science cannot tell you even about the soul. Science cannot tell you about whether this world has been from the beginning like this or has been changed. Science cannot tell you whether this world has had a beginning or not. And science cannot tell you whether it can have an end or not. So these are the shortcomings of science. Science can only deal with what it can experiment. So these are the problems with science. Science is like you come into this room and you open your torch, and the torch shows you all this room, okay? But science cannot tell you what is outside this room. It cannot show you the whole building. Science cannot show you where is this room situated in. What is the surroundings? Science cannot say that. The position of this room versus the whole, for instance, Pakuranga, science cannot say that. When it comes to, I'm of course using my example, when you put a torch into this, being the scientific knowledge, then you cannot see the outside of this. Science is like that. Deal with details, particulars. Science does not deal with the overall entirety of the situation. These are the shortcomings of science. And we know that there are a lot of questions you put it to scientists, the answer immediately is, I don't know. So, now, if Hassan allows me, what are you trying to do? So, we learned what are the good things about science when it gives us knowledge and learn through the science, and you get your worldview from, and also we get to know what are the problems with science, what are the shortcomings of science. Also, the other good things about science that I forgot to tell you is science creates industries. Through the science we can make industries are made. You all understand what industry is. It means factories are made, and then they produce car for us, they produce fridge, freezer, you name it, all the things that we use in life, this is the product of science. This is not the product of, for instance, philosophy. Philosophy does not produce fridge. Philosophy does not produce building construction. So science also makes the life comfortable, more comfortable and easy for us. Correct? Did you all understand the shortcomings of science too? So, if you go, for instance, if you should tell a scientist can tell you all the rules, for instance, in biology, but if you ask him how these rules have come to a place, they are not able to tell you the reason for it. So, science cannot talk about the whole creations for you and tell you about universes and awalim. That's not the work of science. And also science is mostly based on sense detection, correct? Do you agree? No? Yes or not? If it's experiments.
I'll go back to your universes. What do you mean by universes? They still study universes.
No. What I said, science cannot tell you we have intellectual universe as well as imaginal universe and material universe. Science only works in material universe, correct? And this is like a tortoise. So with all of these things we said about science, can science be a source of faith? Yes? Is it reliable enough? I want you to answer, yes or no? Yes, it cannot. It's not able to give you, it's not solid enough, and it's not comprehensive enough to give you the faith. Yes?
But even some of our school teachers who are scientists, they say science is the way of explaining, not the exact way of explaining.
I agree. No, I don't, there's no conflict between what I say and what your teacher says. But what I'm saying, but there are people, you know that there are people that, they everything which is explainable by science, they only accept that. They don't accept anything else. Okay? So science cannot be the source of iman and faith and even understanding and explanation of the words for us. But let's now look at the philosophical worldview. I said we have three worldviews: scientific, philosophical, divine. Philosophy is based on logic and reasoning, right? Philosophy is when things are explained by logic and reasoning. That's the work of philosophy. Philosophy starts from obvious things. For instance, one of the first things in philosophical studies is this: two contradictory things cannot exist at the same time. For instance, day and night are contradicting each other. So philosophy starts from an obvious statements or obvious things. It says you cannot have day and night both together. So it's contradiction of conflicting or contradicting things cannot happen. Then based on these obvious things, philosophy builds up other reasonings and goes and teaches you more and brings you other things so that you start to understand. So also philosophy has a universal view. It's not like scientific view. Science looks at the leaf and it looks like that and explain the leaf and what happens in this plant and all those things, but is not able to tell you whether this word are all these planting words as a totality, whether they have had a beginning. How was the beginning of the planting life altogether? They are not able to state that. But philosophy is able to tell you a universal view. Philosophy gives you a general view. It tells you, for instance, all those things that some of the things that we studied, we said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created awalim and universes, and then we say intellectual universe, imaginal universe, and all those things. These are universal views. It gives you a view of the whole creation of Allah. That's the work of philosophy. So philosophy does not have those limitations of science. That's what I explained to you. Philosophy is work of what? Philosophy is work of human intellect. Philosophy comes from my intellect, your intellect, or intellect of someone else. Correct? So it's because it's intellectual stuff. Philosophy is about reasoning and logic. So, can you see where the problem exists here in philosophical worldview? The problem with the philosophical worldview is because it has come out of my mind and your mind or someone else's human mind. It has got limitation of human mind. Human mind has got its own limitation, right? It cannot explain everything, and it can make mistakes. Although it's much better than science yet, science can make a lot of mistakes. You have probably experienced that. In my life, at least 5-6 times, the view of scientists on coffee has been changed. For instance, every 10-15 years they have said it's very good for cancer, and immediately another 10-15 years they have said it makes cancer. And again, another 15 years, another scientists have come and proved something else about whether it's cancerous or not. So keep changing. And you may, if you want to know more, go and search on internet and see some of this quantumist work of the quantumists, and you will see that quantum has reached to a stage as a science. It's a science. It's a physical science. They have reached to a stage. They say clearly. I've heard that from a lot of quantumist scientists. They say we cannot explain more unless we go to philosophical view. Even in science, they want to go to philosophical view. So, philosophy has got the problem of it is mind of the people, so that can also have the problem and limitations. Allah salawat. So can you get your faith and a strong belief from philosophy that I make or someone else like me make or some scholars even make? Can you does it make faith in your heart that you believe, yes, that's correct, that's the word it is?
Yourself, yes.
No, for the people, no, for other people. It doesn't. Because you always think, but he is a human, he can make mistake, he might have gone wrong. So, the weakness of philosophy is this. Weakness of philosophy is it comes from human mind. But, what the third worldview is divine worldview. Divine worldview clearly means when God says things. Correct? But you have to remember, divine worldview has a lot in common with philosophical worldview. Because if you read in Quran, there are a lot of philosophy in Quran. It means there are a lot of reasoning. Even just because it has come from God and it is stated by God or by the prophets of God, it doesn't mean that there is no reason behind it. It is reason behind it, but those reasons are given by who? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, a divine worldview is a philosophical worldview, but the philosopher of it is not me or this and that. The philosopher of it are Ahlulbayt, prophets, which they get their knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, there is a lot in common between philosophical worldview and divine worldview. So, divine worldview has another thing which there is not in philosophy, but there is in divine worldview as well. That is holiness. There is an element of holiness in divine worldview. But you don't find holiness in the worldview of a human being, do you? It doesn't sound holy. Because man has made it and it has got its own limitation. It does not create a sense of holiness. But we do need to have sense of holiness in our worldview. Why? Why do we need to have the sense of holiness? Because we have to be able to sacrifice for our worldview. If you are not able to sacrifice, if you hear me, for instance, advocating communism, and because it has been made by my mind, it does not generate, although, remember, there are in the history mentions and records of people going for the worldview of communism worldview, socialism worldview, going to battles and for wars and getting killed. Right? But when you talk to them, I've spoken to a lot of communists, people with the idea of communism. Still, it is not holy for them in that way. They go and they do it. They want to see what they have believed in that flourishes in the world. But they have had all the doubts. When you talk to the communists, they have had all the doubts, and the biggest problem with them is because it's based on materialism. Again, they are not able to explain you the whole creation of God, even when it comes to communists. So the worldview must be able to explain the whole world. The worldview must be reliable and not changing. No, as a whole. See, the beginning of my talk was, if you are presented with an idea, either in university or in the school or out there in the society by friends, right? You are presented someone comes and tells you, if you have to be vegetarian, for instance, so that you can prosper, you can become prosperous, you become this, that, and the spiritual and all those things. You have to examine his worldview first, overall worldview, whether he or she can explain the whole creation with that worldview, whether his worldview is not changing, can be a fixed, constant worldview, and whether his worldview creates a holiness, whether it creates a sense of holiness. These are the things you cannot just accept any worldview because it sounds right. I have seen, people, if you do not eat meat for a long time, you might feel a bit lighter, for sure. But is that good enough to accept vegetarianism as a source of faith? No, because you immediately ask them about explaining the whole creation for you. They cannot do that. They are not able at all. So, worldview should have 7 elements. I explain you. If you want to make note, that's fine. I can send you my PowerPoint later on. It must be able to be reasoned intellectually. Someone cannot come and tell you about his worldview and try to encourage you without being able to reason it for you. Correct? That's number 1. Number 2, a worldview must be able to explain the whole creation. It cannot be partially talking about material world. Because we know matter, even you go to science today, has proven and is proving that material world is sort of elusive, and this and that. They call it virtual reality, and they all give different names they have given to matter. But that means, all in all, matter is not the whole creation. Worldview must be reliable and not changing. If someone talks about science to giving you the worldview, that's immediately what you will ask him, whether this science has been changing or not. Whether science is constant. You can say, now we have reached to a level of science that we know everything. We do not need to know anything else. That doesn't exist. Worldview must give meaning to life. It's very important. Worldviews that there are worldviews out there. You might have heard, for instance, that in United States, I don't remember their name, they came up with a worldview and they encouraged the subscribers to that worldview to do collective suicide. They did, yeah. I don't remember the name. So they collectively, like 200 of them, they did suicide. So worldview must be able to give meaning to the life. It cannot be just something for the sake of saying it and then you accepting it. What meaning does it bring to the life? Worldview must be inspirational and enthusiastic. No one can come and bring a worldview to be discouraging you and to tell you, look, for instance, come with any type of argument and tell you, look, what we human beings are like this because we don't know, because we have limited power, because we have limited strength, because we have limited knowledge, this, and make a series of things that you see all correct. Human being is not very strong. Human being is not too knowledgeable. We have the ability to learn, but it's not too, it doesn't know everything. Human being is certain limitation, and then from this, then conclude for you that something which is disappointing, then leave it. Leave everything to whatever happens to you, for instance. That can be a worldview. You don't accept it because it must be inspirational and takes you to a positive attitude. It cannot be lacking this element. inspirational and enthusiasm it must create. Worldview must create sense of responsibility. If any worldview was presented to you and at the end of it, it was encouraging you to be irresponsible and leave everything on its own, then there is something wrong with that worldview. Correct? And the last, that's the seventh element of the worldview, it must create a sense of holiness. If it's not holy, it is very difficult to live with it. It's very difficult to be to accept it and get your faith from it. So we have among the divine worldviews, which I said is religious worldview, correct? Divine worldview means what God says, which is in the religion. Religions, not man-made religions. Religions which have got prophet, and they have proven prophets. So the worldview must be in it. The worldview that we believe as Muslims, it should be monotheistic. Tell me the right word. Monotheistic. No, monotheism. Then, yeah, oneness. But when you want to see it should be bare monotheism in it, we call it monotheistic. Yeah, monotheistic. Yeah, thank you. So it should be monotheistic. That means, sorry. Monotheistic. No, it's the tense of those things. All right. So our worldview and all, which because it comes from God and is divine, and it exists in it that God is. We have done this in our previous lectures that the oneness of God is proven and there cannot be more than one God. So worldview, divine worldviews are always comes with a monotheistic view. Okay, that means it's about oneness. It comes with explaining the oneness of Allah. So when you are out there, or when you read something, or when someone brings you an idea, put it into this test of criteria of the worldview, whether it stands this criteria that I explained you is scientific or is philosophical, especially when it's a lot of times it can be philosophical, and you have to put it into test of these 7 elements that I mentioned for you. And if you want to know more about this, all this my material was from the famous book of Shahid Mutahari. You can refer to it. It's called Man and Universe. And he starts, in that Man and Universe, he starts to explain, the beginning of it starts to deal with the different worldviews of mankind. So it might be another name of it. I have seen it in this name. When it comes in the book called Man and Universe, there are 7 sub-books under that one book. But if it comes to one only book alone, it is called Jahanbini Tawhidi, means monotheistic worldview. That's the name of the book of Shahid Mutahari. I encourage you all to read that book. It's a very, very interesting book, and you learn a lot from that book. Let me see.
And what is the name? Monotheistic?
Yeah, I have the book here. Okay, let me tell you the book, the name book. Jahanbini Tawhidi, Monotheistic Worldview. That's the name of the book. Or Jahanbini Tawhidi. Okay, so this is for today. And I'll give you the team questions. And you work on the team questions. If there is any question, because we don't have individual quiz, I give 5 minutes to any question. If there is any question, I answer.